Can you see me? I'm sometimes mistaken for Lily Tomlin. And oh, see, they have a wonderful stool. There we go. And just one last question before I get into the subject matter. How many people got lost in the hotel since they? A few of you, I see. I thought it was going to be Never Never Land at one point. I'm going to speak in a kind of general form today because I am struck by the extent to which people either are unaware of or ignore some of these major developments and opportunities in the energy arena. It's hard to get your head around. How many of you know what the source rock is in a geologic formation? Oh, good. This is an audience. I think for me that's the best example of what we have opened up in what I call the shale revolution. The source rock is the rock in which hydrocarbons are cooked with pressure and ultimately pool in terms as crude oil or natural gas. That is what independent Texas oil and gas men figured out how to access. The vast store that is in shale is certainly a revolution and really with implications across the economy. It's also the success, typically, of really independent, small and medium-sized companies, not the giants. Nothing wrong with the global giants in the oil, but this had a particular, I think, connection with the kind of freedom. We're the only country in the world that recognizes real property rights in subsurface minerals, oil, natural gas being one. I think that was an incredible dynamic. Why the book that Steve Moore and I wrote is called Fueling Freedom. It really had to do, its success and its value, I think, is really underestimated. I want to read now a quote from one of my favorite authors on anything, but most certainly on the energy issue, and that is Vaclav Smil. How many know Vaclav Smil? I shouldn't say this, but his name always makes me think of Voldemort in the Harry Potter. If you're interested in this subject matter, I believe he has 35 books that he wrote, is on lists of 50 or 100 smartest people in the world. Bill Gates' favorite author, if that's good enough promotion. But he's a master number cruncher about energy, and I really encourage you to take a look at some of his works. The modern world, the industrial world, whatever you want to call this incredible energy revolution that most people call the Industrial Revolution and don't even identify the factor that we're talking about. Vaclav Smil, in a very brief book compared to many others, called Energy Transitions, writes, the epochal transition from biomass to fossil fuels has been the very essence of modernization. Ours is an overwhelmingly fossil-fueled society. Our way of life has been largely created by the combustion of photosynthetically converted and fossilized sunlight. And there can be no doubt that the transition to fossil fuels beset as it was with the miseries of industrialization and rapid urbanization, created a world where people enjoy a higher quality of life than at any time in the previous history. My book starts out with what I call my favorite hockey stick graph. We have lots of hockey stick graphs out there, but around 1800, lots of things about fundamental human welfare took a sharp turn north, which is still heading up there. The average lifespan at the time, I'm using 1800 for the Industrial Revolution, but the was the average lifespan was about, in England, about 25 to 35, which was the highest for the globe as calculated. But it was, lifespan increased by around that amount to 79 now. The tracks that have economic growth per capita follows the same trajectory. The amount of carbon dioxide emissions follows that trajectory. And most important, income per capita started on a trajectory for the bulk of the population, not for only the privileged few. Amazing. And when you look at some of the numbers of how the consumption of energy grew, again, the scale is hard to get your head around. These are Václav Smil's numbers. But around 1875 in the United States, the average per capita income, the average was, this is on standard of living, the amount of income devoted to just basic sustenance, food, shelter, all of that, utilized 75% of its income on basic sustenance. In contrast to that, in 1995, the average individuals spent only 13%. Just simple statistics, but that's amazing. And that has, when you're not just living to provide assistance, all kinds of things occur, like choice, freedom, that has and is continuing to grow. On energy consumption, I go on. 1850, global consumption per capita was around 80 gigawatts. 1900, around 700 gigawatts, a little bit of a change. And in 2000, at a 10.4 terawatts, which is a number, has 12 digits, if you want to know how much excuse me, a terawatt would be. And also the correlation over time between income per capita and excuse me, just the correlation between income per capita and rising energy consumption, amazing. We have, just using just a few of these examples, we have about 100,000 commercial aviation flights per day crisscrossing the entire world. I'm struck that we now eat the delicacies of kings and queens and emperors 365 days of the year. And we are, in this room, really the first generation, I would say, to be completely saturated with energy. I think it would be amusing to see if you could identify all the sensors that are sprinkled pretty much ubiquitously across our lives. We don't see them, we don't imagine they're there, but energy is being consumed by each of those sensors. All of this, so valuable, so valuable. And we all seem to make so much sense and credibility when we discuss these topics here today, but there is a very powerful, very well-heeled, however we want to identify them, but of the left or whatever, but no holds barred climate alarmists that really imagined we can decarbonize. Using that phrase, I think that's kind of hard to say the word carbonize. With it's amusing to imagine we could do so. We're built of carbon, but who imagine that we could and should, as a means of really trying to avert some sort of apocalyptic global warming, that we actually could reduce our energy consumption in the United States by 80%. It's hard to imagine what kind of standard living that would be, but that is the number moved around. And I can't understand I hate to use words like lunacy or all of that, and many shrill terms that divide the polarized climate alarmists and those that don't share that particular view. But, some basic facts so belie what goals they have in decarbonizing. An example would be the amount of wood Europe is now consuming that they add to their carbon budgets. The bulk of the wood to generate electricity. And I think it's often called the largest power plant in Western Europe, owned by a company in the UK called Drax. They have retrofitted a number of their very large generating units with little wood pellets, the bulk of which I think come by the United States and Canada, and which makes them eligible for all kinds of renewable subsidies, because it's a long, boring story, but over the time, the major conferences, like starting in Rio and kind of ending with Copenhagen, I think the number right now is the European Union, as an average, about 40 to 50% of all their renewable portfolio is from burning wood. Burning wood emits probably 4 to 6 times the CO2 that coal does. I don't know what the percentage would be on real pollution. I consider the real pollution that I distinguish from carbon dioxide to be a real thing. And that's just so amazing. It's kind of like, it is to me kind of like a form of insanity that cannot see those. Google, about, I don't know how many years, maybe 4, 5, decided they were going to get some really high-powered engineers to come up with a plan that really would help achieve decarbonization without, massive economic harm. Kind of halfway through the project, the 2 engineers, and this is all documented, the engineers said, guess what? This won't work. I mean, as a matter of physics, as a matter of electric engineering, there's no way. And Bill Gates, whose opinion to some is very important, who had for years massive financial support to deploy more and more wind and solar facilities. He also said, yes, let's stop. He said, I'm not gonna cease supporting research in zero carbon electricity, but I'm not gonna just support putting out today's current wind and solar technology. I'm gonna go back and support really breakthrough research projects. But it would seem those things like that they're burning wood, they're being paid billions of dollars in subsidies to burn wood, and it certainly won't work. I think that's about my 15 minutes, and we'll enjoy taking your questions. Thank you.